Today I will be presenting my speech on coffee beans, and I will go ahead and start. So, did anyone know that coffee beans are actually from a berry? I bet not. Now you know. But I want to discuss the processes that the bean has to go through in order to become what it is. So I will go ahead and do that. So step one is growing, obviously. You got to grow the plant. And from that process, then once that's grown, you'll take the cherry, and then that will go through a different process, and that process is the picking first, I suppose. And then after that is the dry and wet method, which are two different methods. The dry method is just leaving it out in the sun until like the berry dries, and then you just get the seed itself. And then the wet method would be putting it through a wet process, like with water, just like putting it in the water and letting it chill in there for a while. But then for the wet method, after that, it has to go through a drying process, and it has to be properly dried so that it could be stored in the right environment and such. So I believe it was like 0.11% of moisture in the bean left. And then from that process, you get the milling, I believe, which is the process where it will go through the mill, which will take out the husk and make the bean more like a bean. So from there on, you get the exporting from the mills, and the exporting, and at this state it's still called the green. They're still called green coffee at this stage. So it is very important to know the difference between the coffee that is not ready to be brewed yet to the brown coffee beans, which gets us to our next point, which is tasting, where there will be a cupper, as they call him or her, and that person will go ahead and see the quality of the bean, and if it is up to par with the rest of the coffee beans, whatever it might be. So they are okay to ship and use at stores and as products, or not products, as consumable goods. From there, you get roasting, which is where you'll be able to actually get different kinds of blends of coffee. And the roasting really varies, because if you want more of like a lighter roast, you will go ahead and roast that not as long. And then if you want a darker roast, you'll go ahead and roast that longer. But I'll go ahead and touch on that later on in my speech. So grinding is very important, because it is a process that really makes the bean, helps decide whether or not you want like how the coffee turns out when you go ahead and put water on it and you get your coffee. So it's very important to know how you grind it, whether it be like for a flat bottom filter, you'll use like I believe like a lighter grinder, and then from there on it'll be like either a fine. You get to decide whether or not you would like a finer grind or more of a tough consistency, I guess, in terms of grinding. So from after that, you go on to brewing, and brewing is the process of which the bean will go through like will go through, you'll go ahead and like put water, for like a pour over specifically, you put water over the grinded coffee, and you get your coffee from literally that. You just put the coffee underneath the pour over device, and there's your coffee. There are many different methods for brewing too. I don't want to touch on all of them just for the sake of time, but I would like to go ahead and touch on the difference between Robusta versus Arabica coffee. beans. So those beans, there's big differences. For Robusta coffee, that's more of a lower elevation bean, and the bean can yield mass quantities, but it's not as definitive taste compared to Arabica coffees. But it is also less prone to disease, which makes it a very fast-paced method when making this type of coffee bean and such. Whereas Arabica coffee is like more of your gourmet coffees, and those coffees usually have a unique name after the countries. So those coffees will have a very definitive flavor, and depending on the country and such, and that will vary on the country. Sorry, but anyways, so yeah, so I'll go ahead and move on from that. Coffee roast, dark versus the light roast, and dark roasts are roasted longer than the light roast in the roasting process. So a dark roast will have a bolder, stronger flavor, whereas a light roast will have a very acidic taste to it, and very, for lack of better words, light on your tongue, I guess, when you go ahead and taste it. And tasting is also another process which is very interesting because it involves you gotta really spread the coffee out, which they say slurp the coffee, so that it goes across your tongue, so that you can really get the full flavors and get the certain notes of the flavors, because certain parts of the tongue will actually be able to taste the coffee better, depending on if it's a light and dark roast. But anyways, that is the difference between the dark and the light roast. So just pretty much how long they're roasted for, whether it be dark roast, which is roasted longer in the roasting process, and light roast roasted not as long, which makes it the light roast. And for my conclusion, I would just like to say that coffee is a very versatile consumable good that really people should experiment with, because there are various ways to roast. There's various ways to wherever you might get your beans from, and there are different methods when it comes to actually brewing the coffee. So yeah, that's it. That's my process speech, and thank you all very much.